Hi ladies and gentlemen, today is January 24th, 2017, and Trump is destroying Babylon. He is destroying the New World Order, setting it up for complete destruction. I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing, but believe it or not, this video I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the purely political. For a lot of you who like information on biblical things, spiritual things, my presentation of some of the Hebrew concepts, that's really what this is going to be about. I thought about making a long video, but I just as soon make the smaller one, so I'm not going to ask YouTube to allow me to make hour videos. I think it's best to do it this way. So this video is going to be about something very specific. It's kind of a follow-on to the Koresh idea. And so I think I'm going to stick with that at this point, and then I'll do some commentary on a second video about some of the politics that are going on, like Trump keeping Comey. I don't know about that, but under the circumstances it might be a good tactical, strategic move. Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, I don't usually read my comments because it's just a waste of time for me. Not that I don't appreciate what people are doing, but I look at that as a forum for you all. More than myself. I really would not have the time to go through and read all of that. But occasionally I'll see one by accident, or somebody will bring it up and wanted to know what's going on. So my first address here is, I guess somebody wrote in and said, well, my understanding was that Zayin was about covenants. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. But in the word Nazarite, the Zayin is used. And so why is the Zayin used sometimes in certain situations and the Vav used in others? For the word covenant. And the reason is because what it's trying to explain. In the word Nazir, for instance, the Zayin is used to mean separation, cut off from the world. And no, it doesn't mean cut off from your spouse and those types of things. It means, you take an oath for a period of time to be separated so that you can talk with God. Paul talked about in the New Testament by saying, you can go away from each other for a time, but then come back together in joy, that kind of thing. Some people took, short oaths of those types. Some people took lifelong ones like James the Just, but that's another story. I don't really want to get into that. What I do want to do is I'm going to explain that the Zayin, it depends on what you're trying to say. Zayin, separation, dedication to God, covenant with God, that kind of a situation. Okay, so let's write the word Nazir, which is the root for Nazarene, Nazarite. Starts with a nun. The meaning of a nun is a messenger. Kind of interesting, isn't it? So here we have the nun, okay, and then we have the Zayin after that. And again, I'm not a scribe, so I'm going to try to. Okay, there would be a Zayin. Then you have a Yod. Then you have what's called a Resh. That's Nazir, okay? In this situation, as you know, the Nazarites took a vow to separate themselves from the world. Yeah, it was to connect to God, but that was a different process, okay? So that's why the number 7, Zayin, it means sword, separation, whereas the Vav means nail, connection. A Nazir type of thing with the Zayin means you're cutting yourself off from something. It's a really big difference. Important difference. You can actually do both at the same time, but I thought I'd explain that. Okay, Trump is destroying Babylon. All right, we talked about Koresh and how he might be a type and shadow of Koresh in prophecy. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of show you the word Koresh in Hebrew. But there's something that's interesting that happens in Ezra. Now, Koresh is mentioned, I'm going to guess, about maybe 15 times in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, particularly Ezra, Isaiah, and Chronicles. Those are the main ones. But something interesting happens with the name Koresh. In a video some time ago, I told you about the fact that the Hebrew prophets would sometimes change the spelling of a word. And are they just making a misspelling? Did they goof up? No. What they're doing is they're sending a coded message. Okay, it means something when they do that. And a really good example, since it's been the subject of some of my videos here lately, is about Koresh. And so what I'm going to do here is show you that. Okay, so here's the book of Ezra. That's in Hebrew there, and then in Latin. But I want to show you Koresh here, the name of Koresh. And it's right there. Now the lamed at the start there just means a preposition of, and it's, you can see the letters. It's Kaf, Vav, Resh, Shin. But the next time it occurs, it's spelled like this. And you can see it right there. Okay, without the Vav. Kaf, Resh, Shin. The third time in Ezra, and only twice in the entire Tanakh or Old Testament this way, it's spelled the same as it was in the second verse up there. So we have two ways it's spelled. And in the Tanakh, this version, Kaf Resh Shin, only occurs twice in the entire Tanakh, here and here. All the rest are spelled like it was to begin with at first. Why is that Vav there after the Kaf missing in these other examples? Did the prophet just misspell the word and say, you know, he would have made the mistake once there, but why a second time right there? And there's a reason for that, and we're going to discuss that. Alright, so what I've done here on the board is I've put in the two different versions of Koresh that we find. Now, like I said, throughout the Tanakh, Koresh is spelled primarily this way. Kaf, Vav, Resh, Shin. Okay, notice that twice, and only twice in the Tanakh, and Ezra is important that he's the one that's done this because he was the redactor of the Tanakh, of the Torah, which is, I'm not going to get into that. It's kind of a history that would take some time to explain, but at any rate, this is how he spells it twice. And isn't that strange? Again, as I said in that little clip, did he just misspell it and forget to put the Vav in there? And he did it twice. No, this is a deliberate prophetic technique of the prophets. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand because they're not into it. And the rabbis who see me doing this, like I said, are going crazy, you know, that I'm showing this. But as I explained in my Donald Trump and David Koresh series, I think, gentlemen, this is time to start showing these things because you don't get these nuances in the Hebrew. Okay. A Vav means a covenant. Remember, I just talked about that with the Nazir, and we talked about it with the name of the four-letter name of God, the Tetragrammaton, YHVH. So this is how it's spelled everywhere else. Isaiah, Chronicles, even in Ezra. But that two times in the first two verses of Ezra, he changes the spelling. Now, there's another word in the lexicon that is spelled like this, okay? And it means to bend or bow. It's just right before Koresh. And by the way, the Gesenius lexicon only lists this one. It doesn't list that one. That's another signal about what's going on here. Not that Gesenius knew, although he probably did. The Vav has a vowel sound, as you see in the name Koresh here. It's not kev or qua. It's kor. So a Vav has a vowel sound at certain points. Vowels are levels of meaning in Hebrew. You get the base core consonants like you do here, and then you add the vowels in between the words, and they change the meaning of the word through degrees of meaning. The pardes that I talked about before. So the Vav being added in here is a very interesting thing. This is a symbol that's very, very important when you see it in a word like this. So let's get back and ask why. This is where it's going to get, stay with me here if you can. Why did the prophet Ezra take out that Vav twice in the text? It's an emphasis. It's to say, pay attention to what's going on here. He's making a prophecy. God said to Koresh that, Koresh, you are my anointed. You're anointed. I've anointed you to do what you're going to do. This is back in ancient times, okay? So there's the Vav in the name. It's not necessary in the pronunciation, as you can see here, because the vowels can be inserted. This was God placing a Vav in his name to show that he's anointed. to take it out twice is saying pay attention here. You take a vav twice. A vav is 6, okay? And I was going to get into gematria here, but I think that's too far to go for most of you, right? And I don't mean to insult you. I just mean that it takes too much time to explain. But there are number differences in these two words, the totals of the letters, the values. But taking that vav out twice, okay, what does that mean? It means pay attention. Prophetically, it means God is going to deal with this concept of saving the people at least twice. That's going to count in prophecy. The first was the actual Koresh, king of Persia. The second vav is a prophecy that's missing here saying pay attention. It's not that it's being taken away, it's saying this is important. It's done twice. So sometime in the future, a second Koresh is going to arrive on the scene and do the same basic things. Do you see how that works? So this is a very simple example of what I was saying, that sometimes the prophets would change spelling to be prophetic. And there's even more involved here, but I wanted to give you the basics on that so that you'd see it. So what am I saying here? Types and shadows, prophecy. Prophecy and all of those things are, it's like quantum physics. As a matter of fact, the prophetic manner of writing amongst the Hebrews, the Israelites in particular, and the Judahites, and I do separate Judahites from the concept of Jews, and maybe I'll cover that someday. I covered it in my book, The Crimson Thread, but that's another subject. The point being here is that the manner of prophesying was the Hekkelot, and what developed into the Kabbalah was never intended to be like throwing hexes, curses necessarily, or things like that. Not that you couldn't, but that's not what it was used for. The real purpose was to study the words, because what happened, God spoke and things came into existence. The sounds, according to Genesis, brought things into existence. Real Hekkelot, real Kabbalah is talking about studying the letters and the words for what they really are, what they mean. Even the spaces between the words mean something, the number of the spaces between the words. Again, too complicated to get into this short video. So basically what I'm saying is, and I've tried to rush through this because of course time constrictions, I think we're looking at, and I put it up on my Twitter account today, by the way, if you'd like, you can follow me on Twitter at Royston Potter, and there it is on the screen for you. And I put it up on Twitter today, some things that were going on with Donald Trump, and I said, ditto, even Jesus talking about the people that would follow him, he said, in later years, he said, greater things will you do than I have done because I go to the Father. Donald Trump's not perfect. This thing with Comey, I'm cringing on that, but I can kind of understand the tactics behind it. But regardless, Donald Trump is destroying Babylon. He really, honestly is. That's really what's happening is Babylon is being destroyed right in front of our eyes. As long as they don't kill him, as long as God protects him, puts him in the palm of his hand, and writes him on the palm of his hand, and sets up, in one Twitter I sent out, I asked God to put gates, the number 8, God's number 8s, which are basically walls all around Donald Trump to protect him and his family. So hopefully God's holding him in the palm of his hand and protecting him with his gates, his number 8, surrounding him with protection. So I'll leave it there for now. It's probably a lot to try to digest, and it's not going into great depth, but you see on the surface what the situation is with the scriptures and why reading it in the English isn't sufficient all the time, because you miss some of the important things. And again, as I pointed out in one of my last videos, these letters and these words can be expanded out into meanings that are nearly infinite. Seriously. But I won't get into that here, and I probably won't get into it much at all. We kind of did it with the 4-letter name of God, but we won't do much more here. So